So why don't we go ahead and get started here? We have about 200 registrations for this webinar right here. So we've got a full class. Normally when I do these 1 hour sessions, they're live 1 hour sessions. And the last one I did was in University of Toronto. I was at Ryerson University in Toronto. And I had about 3 sessions back to back, and there was about 50 students per session. So this is an interesting dynamic because this is the first time I'm doing this online through a webinar. We do have a number of webinars, but me as an instructor doing this the first time on the webinar, this is exciting for me. So the format that I'm going to do it in is exactly the same format that I follow in the 1 hour sessions. So what that means is that there's going to be a lot of drills. We're going to actually be practicing the stuff that we're talking about here. So I'm going to give you the theory, the mechanics of how this works. And you're going to be doing drills, and we're going to be testing our current reading speed, and we're going to determine what are the elements that we need to improve upon to increase our reading speed, etc. And we're going to do exercises and drills to build upon those elements so you can get a faster increase in speed within this webinar. So that's pretty exciting. It's a little different doing this on a webinar because I don't get to see everyone's reaction to what I just said, but it is pretty exciting. Just note that if you practice what I'm telling you right now and you do these exercises on the webinar and you stay focused, just do these exercises, you're going to see results within this webinar. So that's pretty exciting. So there's a little section where it says chat. I'm not going to take too many questions. If we got time at the end, I'm going to dive into questions. I'm just going to try to get through as much material as possible to help you increase your reading speed. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Joseph Rodrigues, and I am an instructor for IRIS based out of Toronto, Canada. And I've been teaching these IRIS workshops since 2010, but I have been involved with this world of speed reading and information processing, etc., since 2005 when I used to work at a large retailer's IT department. And my boss at the time had recommended that I go out and learn how to speed read because at that time I was taking university courses on the side while I was working full time in this IT department. I had a lot of projects, a lot of information that I had to go through. And as a result, I felt like I'm sure you feel you run out of time and you're not able to get through all that information. And as a result, your grades start to suffer. You start to get stressed out, and it's not a good place to be. So when he recommended that I go out and learn speed reading, I went out on the internet and I did some searching. And maybe that's how you found about this webinar right here. You probably did a search, or perhaps this was promoted to your school and you got a link. But regardless, you're here, and I was kind of in the same place that you were in 2005, except there wasn't a webinar. There was just a little computer software that I downloaded and I started to use, and I started to practice the exact techniques that I'm going to be sharing with you on this webinar, which helped me improve my reading speed. So I've got a lot of practical experience with this stuff because I believe in it. And that's why I teach for the IRIS organization, because I really believe in what we are sharing here as far as speed reading goes and all the other supplementary things that we cover in our online courses, etc. This is exciting stuff. This stuff has been really helpful to me. I've also done private workshops, and in Toronto, I've done live workshops, 5-hour workshops, 6-hour workshops, 2-day workshops, 1-hour workshops, where I've taught up to 50 at a time live, and I'm still doing some. I got some coming up in Toronto. So if anyone here is from Toronto and is interested in signing up for a live workshop, then I'll give you the details at the end of this webinar, and you can take one of my live workshops, which I will be teaching in. I've also done some corporate workshops, and our clients, we did corporate workshops for Groupon, Google, Walmart, NASA, HSBC. All right, so what is speed reading? What is speed reading? I'm not going to ask that question out loud because I don't know if anyone's going to respond in the question section or in the answer section here, but that's okay. I'm just going to tell you that there's a lot of information out there on the internet on the topic of speed reading. If you go on the internet, I mean, just do a search. You're going to find a lot of information out there. Now, what you are, well, someone just replied back. Let's see. To read more efficiently. Exactly. Dead on. And I'm going to tell you exactly what the elements are for efficiently. okay? Because you take speed, it's not just about speed. There's more elements to it. So we're going to get into that. But going back to what I was saying, you are on the internet and you'll find computer software, you'll find information out there on speed reading, and some of the stuff might seem pretty hypey, and it is. So what I'm actually going to share with you on this webinar here are the elements of what makes successful speed reading, which essentially is efficiency. But what I've done is I've broken it down. Okay, so this is the exact formula that we teach in the IRIS live workshops and our corporate workshops, etc., that I'm going to share with you right here. And it's the exact formula that I used myself to get myself over to a level of high levels, to get myself to a point where I can read really fast and process information really efficiently. And not only me, the founder of IRIS, Paul Nowak, uses the same format, and every instructor that's within IRIS, we've essentially took the best practices, the best of the best stuff that you can get on the internet and out there in the world of speed reading, and combined it into the IRIS speed reading workshop. So we're going to go deeper into this now. So speed reading is not just about reading faster. There's three parts to it. Number one is the speed. And here's the acronym that you should get interested in, because if you want to increase your speed, you got to time yourself and set which we're going to do. We're actually going to go and see how fast we read. But what you want to do is find out how fast you read, and you want to improve that speed. And we use this acronym right here, WPM, words per minute. Essentially, all it is how fast you read, how many words you read in a minute. Now, how fast you read depends on the kind of material that you read, how tired you are, how engaged you are with the material, etc. There's a lot of variables, but for the most part, what we're interested in is improving our words per minute score so that we overall improve our reading range. So some material would be reading at a certain speed, and some material, other material, you might be reading slower or faster. But using the stuff that I'm going to talk about in this webinar, I want to help you increase your reading range so that overall your words per minute score increases. And I'm going to tell you how much we can increase it in a moment, but that's one of the elements. Now, there are specific techniques, strategies, and exercises to improve speed, and that is the bulk of what I'm going to cover on this webinar here. I'm going to focus on speed and some comprehension and some retention, but mainly speed, primarily because you need to nail this part first before you start to improve in the other areas. The second piece is comprehension, and you know what? That is not something that I drew right there. And if you see how, if you see my drawing skills, and it's nowhere near my speed reading skills. I have to get this from Google, so I don't think that I draw this good. Comprehension. How much do you understand? All right. So here's how it is. When you read something, right after that, how well do you understand that information that you just read? Can you make sense of it? Can you answer some high-level questions on it? Now, the whole area of comprehension is kind of abstract because there's no real way of measuring how well you comprehend something. And a perfect example is if you take two people, right? So say person number one is a computer science major, right? And then we give that person an article related to technology. And then you take another person who actually doesn't like technology at all, has a huge distaste for technology, and we give them an article about technology. Who do you think will comprehend the article better? Probably the first person, because they're connecting that information that they're pulling out in that article to other bits of information that's stored in their head. Right? So the real way to measure comprehension is, there is no accurate way to measure comprehension, but for the sake of simplicity, it's how well do you get the article or the book that you're reading. Now, there are techniques, strategies, processes, and systems to improve comprehension. And that's also something that we cover. I'll cover it to some level in here, but this is something that we go deeply in the 6-hour or 12-hour workshops and some of our other courses. Now, we treat this as a separate mechanism away from speed. Now, there's a third part to this, and that is retention. How well do you remember the information? How well are you able to recall the information that you read? Now, retention is actually separate. We treat it separately from comprehension. And the reason why we do this is because it's actually managed by different parts of your brain. Now, I'm not going to get too much into this because well, we only have a limited time here, but I recommend that you go out and take some note on this. Learn the difference between short-term memory and long-term memory, and really study stuff related to memory. Now, actually have a memory course where we go deep into the mechanics of memory, and memory has a large part to deal with this retention piece. But like comprehension, there are specific techniques, strategies, and things that you need to know to improve your retention. Now, here's the cool part, right? If you improve your skills with retention, if you work on the exercises and you do the things that will help you with retention, and then you do the things that will help you with comprehension, which are very specific, and you do the things that will help you with speed, then you become an efficient reader. Okay. Not only can you read fast, but you can comprehend what you're reading really fast because you're able to process information really quick in your mind. And then you're able to recall that information for whatever purpose you need, whether it's a test or for your career, etc. Now, when I started speed reading, the bulk of the information is focused on speed. And it took a lot of digging and sifting and working with Iris and the rest of the staff with Iris to build the pieces necessary for comprehension and retention. And then what we found is that, like I said earlier, you add them all together and you work on each of these areas separate, and overall you improve. So in other words, if you actually work on your retention, your speed increases. If you work on your comprehension, your speed increases. If you work on your speed and you do it right, the comprehension increases and your retention increases. This has a compounding effect on each other. All right, so before I go and just tell you anything about speed reading or how this all works, I want you to do a little exercise. So this is not a webinar where you're sitting back and relaxing. You're going to actually do an exercise because we want to check what your current reading speed is. All right, so what I've done actually is I've put together a site. And you just have to go to www.irisreading.com/files. So everyone can see that on my screen here, irisreading.com/files. Now just go to this link, and then you'll get to this page, which has our exercises. So there's actually 3 exercises. What we're actually going to do is you're going to do an exercise right now to check your reading speed. So that's going to be exercise number 1. And the exercise number 2 is where we're going to be doing our drills on this particular exercise. And then exercise number 3 is where we're going to be doing a test at the end. So we're going to see where we're at right now. We're going to do some exercises. I'm going to share theories, etc. with you. And then we're going to go in and test to see if all that stuff works that we're doing. Now, if you actually click on these links, you'll actually get to a PDF. So these are all PDF files. Now, what I'd like you to do is, preferably if you could print this out, that would be helpful. If you can print out all the exercises here, 1, 2, and 3, just these 3. Don't worry about the bottom 2 links for now. Print them out and just put them aside. Then it's going to be, I wouldn't say a lot easier because I tend to read a lot more on my computer screen, but just some of the techniques we're going to talk about right now, it's a tad bit easier to do it offline. So if you print it out, then it'll make it easier. If not, that's fine. We're just going to end up reading it online or following the exercises online. All right, so everyone should have access to this page right now, irisreading.com/files. What I'll do is actually copy this link, and I'm going to actually paste it in here in the webinar chat and send it to all. So you should all have that link. All right, so go to that. And I see more attendees joining in. So, by the way, there's going to be a recording for this. So if you missed the first part, then you'll have access to the recording. But that doesn't mean you should jump off, because you can ask questions at the end, and that's going to help build upon what you learn. And that's done in a live environment here. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to check our reading speed. And here's how it's going to work. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to grab exercise number 1. I don't want you to start reading it yet, but just let me tell you what we're going to do here. We're going to check our existing reading speed. So what I want you to do is I want you to read this exactly like when I say go, normally exactly how you normally read, right? So when you read for good comprehension. What I want you to do is just read it like how you normally read, right? From the start of the first paragraph. So, and we're going to do this for 1 minute. So what I'm going to do is just say, is everyone ready? There's no way for me to tell if everyone's ready right now, but just get ready, right? I'm just gonna give you a moment. All right. Okay, I'm going to assume everyone's ready, and we're going to do this one exercise. You're going to read it like how you normally do, exercise number one, and you're going to read for 1 minute. Is everyone ready? And then when I say stop, you're just going to note where you stopped off. Okay? You can't note on the screen, but just remember where you stopped off. And let's do this for 1 minute and set my timer here and go. And stop. Okay, just note where you stopped off. Here's what I'd like you to do next. I want you to count the amount of lines you just read. There's ballpark roughly 10 words per line in this article. So I want you to count the amount of lines you read and multiply it by 10. That's going to give you your rough words per minute score. And then I want you to ask yourself, how well did you feel you comprehended this article? 0 being you didn't comprehend it at all. Now, this is all moderate level material here, so and nothing too heavy, hopefully nothing too boring. But how well do you feel you comprehended? And again, do you get the material at a certain level? Not like super detailed, certain aspects, certain elements of the article and whatnot. But how well do you feel you get it, from a score of 0 being you don't comprehend it at all to 10 being you comprehended it really well? So just give yourself that score, and just note that somewhere. If you can, on your phone or your piece of paper, or just pull up a Word document and just note. What we did just now was just check our words per minute score, right? And like I said, that's the 10 words per line, amount of lines you read, and that calculation right there. So the amount of lines you read multiplied by 10 and your comprehension score. So just note that and put that aside. All right, so just note that the average words per minute score is about 200 words per minute. So if you're around this range, and most of our students who start off these workshops are around this range right here, unless you tend to read a lot for your career, you will probably be in this range right here. If you're in this range, then you're at the average reading speed. Now, the reading speed, the average has actually gone down since the 50s. And one of the reasons why it's gone down is because nowadays we tend to lack focus. So, for example, you might be, listening to this webinar right here, and perhaps because in your computer you might have Skype messages going off, or text messages coming in. Now, every time something like that happens, you automatically put your attention on that item, even if it's just for a split second, and then you just get into this whole process where you're being inefficient. So, in other words, you're not focused. Simplify it. You're not focused on this webinar. I'm not saying that you're doing that. Some of you might be, I know. Uh, but however, this is just how this is how the norm of society is nowadays. We just tend to always pay attention to whatever distraction comes our way, and we're essentially wiring our brain for lack of focus. So in the 50s, we didn't really have technology that was so distracting, and as a result, we used to be more engaged in what we're doing. So what they found is the words per minute score has actually gone down because we have a hard time staying focused. And one of the best ways to realize this is to ask yourself the question, how long can you stay reading an article or a book? Like, how many minutes can you read for without having your mind wander onto something else? It's almost accepted as the norm nowadays that your mind will wander onto something else. If you're focused on reading, you read for about like 5-10 minutes, and your mind goes on to something else. And then what happens is you end up having to pull that attention back, and going back and rereading the last bit that you did, etc. And there's a lot more other elements of why our reading speed is at this point. And some of them we're going to address on this webinar, but that's the average. So if you're reading about 300 or 400 words per minute, then like I said, you're probably reading a lot for your career. That's what I found. I find students who take the workshops, some of our corporate clients, will be already reading at about 300 or 400 words per minute, double the speed of the average population. Now, what's cool about that is what we're really doing on this webinar and within our courses and our workshops is dissecting the exact mechanics that those faster readers are doing. So if you practice the things that I'm going to share with you on this webinar, and you make a habit of doing these things, then you're going to be able to increase your reading speed to about 400 to 800 words per minute with good comprehension. And the fundamental reason why you're able to do this is because of the specific elements and steps that the faster readers are doing at an unconscious level. They're not aware of that they're doing these things. We're actually going to break it down in this webinar. I'm going to share it with you. And B, through repetition. So we're going to practice these techniques on this webinar, but I'll tell you one thing. Sometimes what happens is you end up forgetting the stuff that you learned, or you don't diligently practice it, and you'll revert back to your old ways. Now, keep into consideration that you've been reading, most of you have been reading for like 20, 30, 40 years, the same way that you normally read right now. And essentially, your brain is wired to read that way. And the only way you're going to be able to get to this faster pace right now is if you force yourself, you condition yourself to read using the techniques that I share with you on this webinar. And what happens is the faster readers, the ones that never took a speed reading workshop but are already reading at 400 to 800 words per minute, those students have unconsciously, without even knowing, figured out the optimal things to do. So, this stuff is not rocket science. This is just some sound concepts, which I'm sharing with you, that the faster readers are already doing. And our goal here with this webinar is to integrate it into our reading style. So let's look at how we read right now. Okay, so I've actually got a little whiteboard here. It's the first time I'm using one of these like drawing pens. And what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to draw out, just pretend that these are some words right here, okay? Because I'm not actually going to write because it's going to take too much time. So these are lines of text. Normally when we read, we look at one word at a time. So our eyes go here, then they 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 go here. Each time it goes to each spot, that is called, in the speed reading world, a fixation point. And you go on to the next one, the next one, the next one. Now, the reason why we read like this, and I'm going to tell you that this is a normal way of reading, but it's not the most efficient way of reading. The reason why we read like this is because when we first learned how to read, this is how we were taught. Our teachers gave us a very easy book, and we were told to read out loud, one word at a time. And then as we moved on, as we were able to comprehend what we were reading through a series of questions that the teacher would ask, they would then ask us to read in our head. We would then move on to more complex material, and we would never revisit this style of reading. So what happens as we move on to more complex material is our comprehension gets better, our speed increases to a certain extent, but we're always limited by reading one word at a time like this. Now, there's a whole mechanic of what happens with your eyes each time you stop and read a word and then go on to the next and go on to the next. There's a whole bunch of little tiny tasks that happen that are essentially taking up too much time. So the secret here is to be able to read multiple words at a time. And the reality is that we already do it. We just need to condition ourselves to be able to do it more often. So there it is right there. That's the main part of the speed aspect. So I actually want to just go to my presentation for a moment and just drill deeper into this. Right, so everyone's clear on how we learn how to read. Can't really ask for feedback. If someone just types in there and just says, oh, someone just said, here's a question. Is 800 words per minute a limit? No, it's not a limit. And I know this because Paul reads faster than this. The speed that I read at is about 600 to 800 words per minute. And I know sometimes I do read faster than 800 words per minute, depending on the type of material that I'm reading. So you're always going to read material that's written really well and engaging and stuff that you're interested in and that you comprehend really well based on the language and just the storyline and etc. A lot faster. And you're always going to read heavy technical stuff slower. Now, coming from a background where I could barely get through a page of text without remembering what I read and having to go back, I was reading probably at like the 160. So I know you can go beyond this, and it's just a matter of practice, practice, practice. All right, so here are the three keys. You want to note these things because these are the things that are going to make the biggest difference for increasing your reading speed. Number one is fixation. So I brought up that example about how we learned how to read. So essentially what we're doing here, I'm going to flip back here, is we're fixating on one word at a time, right? So this is our imaginary text right here, where each time we look at a word, we're fixating on the word, and we're reading, and we're going on to the next, going on to the next, going on to the next. Now, there's another part to fixation. Okay, so sometimes we look at words that for extended periods of time, we're talking split seconds here, and it's not helping us with comprehension. So in other words, say you're looking at the word fixation here, you're not going to comprehend it anymore if you look at it for a half a second, or if you're going to look at it for 1 second. I mean, if you have an understanding of what fixation means and how it relates to the context, you don't need to spend extra time looking at the word. Now, this might sound like I'm being really picky here with this little description, but if you keep into consideration, if you read for about an hour and you're doing a lot of excess fixation, then your overall reading speed will greatly be reduced. Now, keep into consideration one thing. I asked you to read for 1 minute, and probably you did a good job, and you weren't tired, and you were able to get through that the bit of the material that I asked you to read. If you're reading for an hour, or some of you read for like 3-4 hours, there's probably going to be moments in there, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of time when you do this. You're not aware you're doing this, where you're fixating on the words more than you need to, and if you do a calculation of your overall reading speed, it's probably a lot lower than what we clocked in right now. So that's one of the things that we need to work on. I'm going to show you how to get away from this. All right, so that's fixation. The second piece is regression, rereading the same sentence or paragraph twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. And the fundamental reason why we do this, 2 reasons primarily, is because we lose focus, and 2, because we didn't comprehend it well the first time, which is also related to lack of focus. And lack of focus can be caused by our mind wandering onto something else, such as the instant messengers, notifiers, things like that. So and I'll tell you something about this. We found out that readers do this about 33% of the time. They regress. They go back and reread the same sentence or the paragraph. So again, if we do a calculation of your adjusted words per minute score, keep in consideration that you're doing this about 33% of the time. What is your actual reading speed? Okay, so there's tools and techniques to get over this, and I'm going to show you that in a moment. The third piece to increasing your reading speed is probably the most misunderstood, but it's something that can help you the most if you work on it, and you work on it indirectly. I'll tell you exactly how to do this. And it's called auditory reassurance or subvocalization, essentially reading in your head. Now, very important that you note that this is not something you want to eliminate. Okay, I'm saying that very slowly because I really want you to comprehend this. This is not something you want to eliminate. This is something you want to reduce. And the level that it will be reduced will be based on the amount of the techniques that I will mention to you in a moment that you use. So in other words, if you practice reading in the format that I will share with you in a moment, you will find that auditory reassurance will be reduced. Now, auditory assurance, just put it here in tiny little text, is reading in your head. Okay, so I just want everyone to be really clear on what this is. It's that little voice in your head that reads along with you out loud in your head when you go through. So you're not crazy. That's there for a reason. And one of the reasons why it's there is it helps you with comprehension, because it's there because when you read something, when you read in your head, you're essentially affirming it to yourself. And we developed that technique when we first learned how to read. Going back to my example here, reading out loud one word at a time. What you'll also find is that if you actually clock your reading speed and reading in your head, and then clock your reading speed, reading out loud, you'll find that it's actually pretty close. Because essentially, for most of us who haven't practiced these techniques or haven't been exposed to it, reading in our head is no different than reading out loud, except we're not using our vocal cords and projecting vocals. I mean, that's a fundamental difference. In fact, I can actually go deeper into this, but we won't have enough time. But just you want to research or go on the internet and do a search about the larynx, which is a little muscle in your throat, which essentially fires when you're reading in your head. So this little muscle, which is responsible for projecting vocal cords, is actually firing while you are reading in your head. That's interesting. I'm not going to get too deep into that. That's why we have 2 6-hour workshops and we work on all that stuff. But fundamentally, this is something that we want to work on here. Okay, so auditory reassurance. Now, that happens by grasping certain techniques. Okay, so there are these three things right here that all can be worked on with the techniques that I'm going to show with you, which we're going to apply to exercise number 2. All right. So very important, if you want to increase your reading speed, you want to get your reading speed up to 600 words per minute, 800 words per minute, and even beyond, it's really important that you grasp the concepts. Know the areas. What are the techniques, strategies, and drills you have to work on for speed, comprehension, and retention? These are different areas. We're focusing a lot on speed within this webinar. And for good reason, because it's hard to cram all this information in a 45-minute webinar. And I thought that I'll just give you the key main pieces, the speed reading stuff that helped me when I learned how to do it in 2005. But essentially, there's elements to each one of these areas here. So know all the elements of the areas. And if you have any questions, you can email me anytime. I had my email up on the screen in the starting. It's joe@irisreading.com. Feel free to email me because I love this stuff. So you work on all these areas and you will get the results. And you have to do it with diligent practice, as in that you practice this stuff every day. And I recommend you actually practice this stuff for about an hour a day for 90 days. Now, we actually have computer software and everything that you can do drills, etc., on to help you improve your reading speed, comprehension, retention, which will actually allow you to practice everything that I talk about in here. And I recommend you do so because you have to understand one thing. You're kind of wired to read the way that you read right now, which is not based on the techniques I'm going to show you. All right, so I'm going to actually just jump right into the techniques right now. All right, so there are 3 things that you can do right now if you want to increase your reading speed. Number 1 is you've got to use a guide. So you've got to use a pen, a finger, or some type of moving guide to govern your reading. And I'm going to show you how that is and how that works in a moment. I'm going to pull up the article. And the reason why we do this is because it's not enough for me to just tell you, hey, read faster now. For the remainder of this webinar and for the next 90 days, for an hour a day, I want you to read 30, 40% faster. Because you're conditioned to read the way that you read right now. So you've got to actually trick yourself by using a pen or a guide. There's even computer software that will flash the guide across the screen. I'll show you the format that we're going to read in a moment, but you're going to use a guide. And this is going to help you bump up your reading speed and calibrate your eyes to be able to read faster. And without thinking about it, you're going to unconsciously grasp some of these elements here and integrate it into your reading style, and you're going to be able to read faster. So using a guide. Number 2 is you want to reduce fixation points. So going back to our example here, instead of reading like this, one word at a time, you're going to train yourself to read multiple words at a time. Now, it's important to understand that it's not static. So you're not going to be reading 3 words, 3 words, 3 words, or 4 words, or 5 words at a time always. It depends on the level of complexity of the material. It depends on how tired you are. There's a lot of variables, but essentially a natural speed reader, somebody who reads really fast, will sometimes read one word, sometimes read three words, sometimes read two words at a time. And they'll do this all throughout their reading, and they will clock their speeds at a higher pace than everyone else because they're reading multiple words at a time as a result of reduced fixation points. So I'm going to get even more specific here. Say this right here. We're looking at this. We're imagining that these are three words right here, right? So essentially, to read these three words at a time, you probably would have to fixate right here. And again, this stuff's not static. This is all done unconsciously in your brain with your eyes, etc. You'll essentially fixate right here, and then you'll take a snapshot of these three words. Now, we already do this. This is something we already do, right? So when you see a stop sign, for example, do you read a stop sign? No. You just know based on the context and the way the information is presented that it says stop sign, and you don't have a auditory reassurance. You just take a snapshot of the word. Now, even a more specific example is I've got Starbucks coffee up on my screen right here. Starbucks coffee. Most of us, when we drive by Starbucks coffee, we don't stop and read the two words separately. Again, this is all happening really fast. Starbucks coffee. We simply look in that direction and we see the words Starbucks coffee. Now, because it's not presented on a piece of paper in which we're calibrated to read one word at a time, we still have the comprehension, reading multiple words at a time, looking at a sign. And what we want to do is we want to mimic that same process, which we essentially do unconsciously with stuff that is outside of reading, into reading. And we do this by reducing fixation points. Essentially, one fixation point, which is roughly in the middle, right below the words, the middle of the two words, where you read multiple words at a time. Okay, I'm going to go back here. And we do that using our peripheral vision. Peripheral vision. Let's go deeper into that. So you have roughly two kinds of vision. Okay, macular vision and your peripheral vision. Now, your macular vision is your primary focus. This is when you look directly at something, and you've got this like really sharp focus. In fact, if you've got a pen in your hand and you stick your arm straight out and you point the tip of the pen to the ceiling, you could even do this with your finger. Point it directly up to the ceiling, and then you'll notice that you'll be able to sharply focus on the tip of your pen using your macular vision. Now, if you focus on the tip of your pen or your tip of your finger and you just kind of glance around, you'll notice you'll still see stuff, and that's done with your peripheral vision. What I'm saying is that you can use your peripheral vision while you read to read multiple words at a time. It's just that most of us don't train ourselves to do this. So you can do this. And now if you actually go over to exercise number 2, and we've got another like 2 minutes of this webinar here. I want to cover more stuff. But what we got here is another got a link to another exercise. So I'm just going to go back to that page where our exercise is. And what we've got is exercise number 2. So this is an article where you can practice this technique. I'm really hoping that this webinar does not cut off at the 45-minute mark, because I want to make sure that I can cover all this stuff on here. It doesn't just kind of disconnect. But what we've got here is an article in which, if you use your pen as a guide, what you want to do is you want to run it under the line of text like this in a steady manner. And you want to run it about 30 to 40% faster than you normally read. And then what's going to happen is you're going to be able to read multiple words at a time, because you're going to force yourself to read faster. And this takes practice. You can start off by bouncing your pen under in this kind of motion like this, where you're just going from the first part of text here, so you put the point right here and then under here, and then bounce it here, and then bounce it here and bounce it here, etc. You could do that and then set your fixation points that way and train yourself to read multiple words at a time by only looking at that fixation point and reading the words above it. Now, what I recommend you do is you actually do this exercise. You start off by doing it about double the speed that you normally read. So say you're reading 200 words per minute and you kind of have an idea how fast your eyes move across the page. Then what you can do is double that reading speed by, or you can just force yourself to read faster. Oh, look, the webinar didn't cut off. That's great. Very good. I was kind of nervous that it was going to just cut off. All right, so what you would do is we'll actually do this exercise. So grab that article and open it up. It's the one on this, it's article number 2 on this page. There it is, exercise number 2. Go to that one. And what I want you to try to do for 1 minute, I'm gonna have my timer ready, is read it in this kind of manner. Okay, so you're going to run your pen under the line of text from the start to the finish, and you're gonna go we're gonna go about 50% faster than we normally read. Okay, and what you're gonna try to do is you're gonna try to read at that speed. Okay, so why don't we do that for 1 minute, and then I'm going to do another variation to this exercise. Okay, so run the pen under the line of text and go 50% faster than you normally read. And don't think about setting peripheral or your fixation points or using your peripheral vision. Just try to do that, and we're going to go deeper into this. So let's do this for 1 minute and start. Okay, stop. All right, so if you did that, if you went about 50% faster, and this is your first time doing this, you might have noticed that your comprehension has dropped down a little bit. And what we want to do here is we want to calibrate our eyes to be able to read at that speed. And when you calibrate your eyes to read at a speed about 50% faster, so in other words, by forcing yourself to read faster using a pen as a guide or a finger as a guide to go 50% faster, your eyes are going to calibrate to be able to read those words that you're running your finger under, and you're going to do it by using your peripheral vision and having less fixation points. That's the way the mechanics work. Now, I'm actually going to show you an easier way to do this, and you can do this online because it's actually a lot better. This particular exercise is a lot better if we started off a different way, but we didn't actually have time to do it on the webinar. So I'm actually show you a way to exercise your peripheral vision and reduce fixation points while mimicking the exact same process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy some text here from the article, and then we're going to go to the Iris Reading website. And then I'm going to go to resources here. And we're going to click on this link here, Accelerator. So Accelerator is an app. It's a free app. All you got to do is just take your text and paste it in here and then hit the begin button. And what it does is it converts the text into the video. Now, why we're interested in this particular app in this instance is if we go to settings here, we can set our words per minute score to, for example, let's set it to 350. So the average reading speed is 200. We're going to set this at 350. And let's set the chunk size to 3 words. And then I'm going to hit save. So now what's going to happen is, I'm just going to pause that, is Accelerator is going to take the text and it's going to convert it into this video type of format. And it's going to play 3 words at a time. And all you have to do is look right in the middle here and try to read this as it plays. So I'm going to hit read, and you're going to see the text go. You're actually going to find this pretty easy to read. A, because your eyes are not moving back and forth, and B, because you're automatically calibrating to be able to read at this speed because you're forced to use your peripheral vision. The information is essentially presented in a different way. Now, using the tool Accelerator, you're actually able to exercise your ability to read multiple words at a time. And all you have to do is just focus in the middle here, right below the word, and train yourself. So put it at a speed that you find significantly harder. I would say about 25 to 50% faster than you read, and try to read that and try to get good comprehension out of it. Now, what you'll find is in the starting, it might seem a little weird. And, even when we did the manual drill, that might have seemed a little weird, but your eyes eventually start to adjust to reading this way. And then you're able to read multiple words at a time. You're actually able to comprehend it better. And then what's going to happen is if you start to adjust to that higher level of speed, all you got to do is just increase the speed by small increments. Say increase it to 375, and then practice at that speed till you get used to it. And then when you go and read a regular article like this, you're going to find that you're going to be able to read it faster because you've trained your eyes to read multiple words at a time. But you know what? You still have to use your pen as a guide. And I actually had a question that come in. I'm going to address this right now. Wouldn't a guide be a motor response and slow you down? So if you're using a pen as a guide, you want to make sure that you push yourself to go 25 to 50% faster than you normally read. And you want to hold that pace even if comprehension drops a bit, and you want to calibrate your eyes to be able to read that speed. So don't do this with textbook material that you're going to be tested on tomorrow. Grab any book that is easier to read. Creative nonfiction books are good too. Even articles like the ones that I'm using right here for the examples. And take Accelerator or print it out, use a pen as a guide, and practice going 25 to 50% faster. Okay, just practice for 1 hour a day. What you'll find is that you'll start to adjust to it, and with a pen, that's the only way that you can force yourself to go faster. Because like I said, it's hard for me to say to you, just read faster now, 25%, because you're going to exercise that speed. It's hard for me to say that, and it's hard for you to know if you're actually doing it. So when using a pen as a guide, you can actually see how fast you're moving. And you're just pushing yourself 25% to 50% faster because you want to acclimate to that speed. Now, going back to what we were saying earlier, let's go back to this slide right here. This is what essentially everything that we talk about in the IRIS workshops, everything that we teach in our programs are based on what the faster readers are doing. If you are forced to read 8 hours a day for your career and you're forced to process that information really fast and you're under a lot of pressure and you're doing this for years for 8 hours a day, you're going to unconsciously figure out how to read faster. You're just going to be forced to do it. Now, what's going to happen is that you're going to unconsciously do these things. You're going to automatically use less fixation points. You're going to have less auditory reassurance. You're going to have less regression. And what we're trying to do here with these exercises is mimic that process, speed it all up. So you don't have to read for 8 hours a day for your career. And you can do that by understanding that what we want to do is reduce our fixation, reduce our regression. Essentially, you can eliminate this once you practice this regularly. And as a positive side effect from doing the exercises the way I intended or the way I showed you, both by using Accelerator or the manual process, you will reduce your auditory reassurance and you'll be able to read faster. Now, one of the questions that you would get, what I get from the class is, well, if you're reading faster and you're just looking at words faster, won't your comprehension go down? The answer to that is in the starting, it will. But if you practice, you will be able to read faster and get a higher level of comprehension. And the reason why that happens is I'm going to show you another slide here, is that Groups of words have more of a contextual meaning than single words. So let's look at this sentence right here on the screen. It's broken down. This is how we normally read. Okay, so the first part here, the rain in Spain falls mainly on the paint. A faster reader will read multiple words at a time. Let's just say they could read 5 words here and 4 words here. This is how they would read it. Fixation point, read this. Fixation point, read that. They'll be able to get through this line of text faster. And they won't lose comprehension because the context is still there. The meaning is still there. When you take a snapshot of these first 5 words, you still have that level of comprehension. And I would say even greater level of comprehension. The reason why is because it goes back to that saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Essentially, when you read multiple words at a time, you're creating that image faster in your mind. Okay? So that right there is a technique that you could do. And if you don't like doing it manually, just go to accelerator.com, there's a link on the IRIS website, and take the articles that I sent to you and paste it in there. Then what I'd like you to do is after you practice this, and I would say, practice this for about an hour. I would have liked to have done it on the webinar, but I wanted to give you actually more content in the webinar so you can get make greater sense of all this pieces and you can take it and apply it. So I hope you got a whole bunch of notes. Now, here's what I'm going to say. If you take the article, take this article, throw it into Accelerator, practice it, and put it at an aggressive pace. Even just go out and get another article and take some information and just paste it into Accelerator and practice. Or when I refer to offline, I'm referring to textbooks or physical books. Do the techniques that I talked about here. Then what I'd like you to do is go back to this page, the irisreading.com/files page, and then click on exercise 3. And I want you to clock yourself reading for 1 minute, okay? And do it by using your finger as a guide, moving at an aggressive pace, but at a pace where you feel you comprehend everything that you're reading. And then just clock yourself and do it for 1 minute. And exactly like how we did it with the first exercise, stop after 1 minute, note where you stopped off, and then count the amount of lines you read, multiply the amount of lines you read by 10, and give yourself a comprehension score of 0 being you didn't comprehend it that well or at all, and 10 being you comprehended it really well. And notice the difference. Notice the difference. You'll actually find that your reading speed has increased, and for some of you, your comprehension has actually gotten better. Now, if your comprehension has gone down, what I'm going to tell you is that you're probably trying to go too fast. You essentially want to find a place where you're losing about 25 to 40% comprehension just for the sake of exercise, and then stay reading at that speed till you calibrate to read faster. And your eyes will adjust. And there's more to it than just your eyes. There's the parts in your brain that processes the information. All that stuff's going to adjust for you to read at a higher speed. Now, it'd be nice to spend 3-4 hours on this webinar and even a live class with you, which I actually want to do to help you get to this point. So if you go, some of you might have actually done this exercise. You've actually noticed that you've increased your reading speed by 25% by using the techniques, right? Practicing this a few times with Accelerator or on just printing it out and following the drills using your finger as a guide. You would have actually noticed that you've increased your reading speed. Now, if you don't practice, continue practicing the things that I told you, you're going to easily revert back to your old ways. And sometimes it can be kind of discouraging to practice this stuff with textbook material that is due tomorrow as part of an assignment or things that you have to read for your work tomorrow. I would suggest practicing this stuff with some of your leisure materials so you can get the hang of it. And then you're going to automatically start to learn, you'll automatically start to read faster. Now, if you gave me an article like this, I'm not actually using my finger as a guide. I don't do that. I mean, I only do that when I'm training myself, but for the most part, I just grab an article and I start reading. So the whole idea of using your finger as a guide and training yourself to read multiple words at a time and read 25% to 40% faster is to calibrate your eyes to be able to read at that speed and comprehend what it is that you're reading. So if you practice this stuff, what you'll find is that if you pick up an article and start reading even without your finger as a guide, you're going to be more focused, you're going to read faster, you're going to comprehend better. And we didn't even get into retention later. We didn't get into retention in this webinar, but you're going to find that it's going to tie into the stuff that we talk about in the retention pieces. So we've gone over, and I'm glad we've gone over, because I wanted to cover this material to this greater detail so that you can get the most out. You probably have a whole pile of notes right now, a lot of action steps that you can take to go deeper in the world of speed reading and improve your reading speed. Here's my email address. You'll see it on the screen. It's joe@irisreading.com. If you have any questions, and I tried really hard to cram all this in 1 hour, and I actually thought this was going to be only 45 minutes. But if there's anything beyond this that you want to know about, and there's a lot more to this world of speed reading, then you can email me at joe@irisreading.com. Now, in our live workshops, we spend 6 hours going through this stuff. There are pieces related to speed, there's pieces related to comprehension, there's pieces related to retention. We go deeper on all this stuff. There's many more techniques and strategies, way more than this what I talked about right now. And we go through a lot of drills, we go through a lot of exercises. If you are interested in getting us to come out, getting me personally too, to come out to one of your company events or to your school to do a live workshop, then you can email me at joe@irisreading.com. And if you want to attend one of our live courses, well, I've got a deal for you, those of you that have joined us on this webinar, where you can get a live class, a 6-hour workshop. Instead of paying $299, which is our regular price, you can get it for $149. But you have to make sure that you go over to this site, the irisreading.com, using this link. So go to irisreading.com/live, LIVE. And then what that's going to do is going to take you to the discounted online course link. So I'll actually go to it right now. I just want to show you the difference. Or discounted live course link, in which over here you can register for one of our live workshops that are coming up. And only those who have joined this webinar have access to this special link, because if you just try to go through live courses just by going through the website, you're going to see that it's not at this discounted price of $149. Now, I know it says expires April 25th, and what is the date? Oh, that's right. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to offer you a special discount of $149, and it's also discounted based on group here. You'll see the prices accordingly. If you register for one of our live courses before the 25th using the special link here, so you go to irisreading.com/live. Again, if you go to the website and try to register through there, you're not going to get this discount. You've got to go through irisreading.com/live, because that's where you've got the special link. So you can save essentially 50% of one of our live courses. And this is a 6-hour workshop. And we go into detail into the elements of speed, comprehension, retention. We do a lot of practice. I'm sure a lot of you have questions, a lot of questions related to what I talked about, because I didn't really get a lot of time to share everything that I wanted to share in this webinar. I'm always trying to condense information to give to you to maximize your results. But really, if you want to get the most out of speed reading, you got to attend one of these live workshops, because we have it structured in a way where you get enough exercise and we go deeper. We spend a lot of time going into the elements of speed, comprehension, retention, and build upon everything that I talk about on this webinar for 6 hours. And that's where students get the greatest results, because for 6 hours, you're essentially drilling yourself and practicing and practicing. And after that, you're essentially wired to read that way. Now, if you sign up for one of the live classes, you'll actually get access to Iris Ace Reader, which is a online software where you can log in. You'll get a login and password, and you can practice everything. So you can have a full study plan to improve your reading speed, which you can implement. And like I said, the best way to learn this stuff is to practice it for 90 days. You'll have login and password for that, so you can do that. Now, if for some reason, I recommend you take advantage of this, because it's best to learn this stuff in one of our live classes. If you like online learning, then I want to offer you another discount. We have our live courses. That's not our online courses. We have our online courses that we're going to offer for $59 till the end of till Friday, till almost the end of Friday, till midnight Friday. So if you go, again, you have to go to a special link. You have to go to irisreading.com/web, and over here you'll find all our online courses. So these courses are, some of them are going deeper into certain elements of the world of speed reading, such as memory, reading on digital devices. There's mind mapping, which is a course that I helped collaborate with Paul to create. There's productivity courses. There's a specific comprehension course, and you can get access to these online courses at the discounted price. Essentially, regular price is $200. You get it for $59. Again, this is only available till Friday. So make sure you sign up for it right away and take advantage of this offer. And I really recommend if you're new to speed reading, that you start with the Foundations course, because the Foundations course is actually a live workshop that we've recorded and broken down into exercises. And start with that, because that's going to give you a good level of understanding of how this stuff works. And if you already have a certain level of understanding, and if you take the stuff that I talked about in this webinar and you get really good at it, and you want to go deeper into comprehension, for example, then we've got a specific comprehension course that you can take. So there we have it. Okay, so we've gone over by 15 minutes, and I hope you actually got some value out of me going over 15 minutes. Please type it in the question section there and say, I appreciate you, Joe, for going over 15 minutes and going deeper into some of the stuff. I would appreciate it if you do that. All right, so again, I did this because I wanted you to get more into it. I wasn't planning on covering this much content in the webinar, but like I said, I'm glad I did. And just like with the classes, I love this information. It's helped me so much. It helped me improve my ability to process information, comprehend information better. And the stuff that I learned from taking the speed reading classes and using the speed reading software has helped me in other areas of my life. I'm a lot more focused. I have a high level of productivity, and I'm also able to take what I learned in speed reading and apply it to audio learning and learning at seminars, because I love seminars and I love audio learning. I listen to podcasts. I just love learning in general. So I hope you enjoyed this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. We had a huge turnout today, and I am excited. We got more webinars coming up, and I recommend you take advantage of this offer, because it's only the offer for the live courses or the online courses, because it's only available till Friday. So go ahead and do that right now. And if you have any questions, you can email me at joe@irisreading.com. So I'm getting a lot of thank you, good comments on here, so I am happy. That's great. Okay, good. All right, perfect. Thank you very much, and this recording will be available, and I will send it over. Have a good night.